Oh, okay, so
Call to order St. Joseph City Council meeting of Monday, February 6th. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Item 2, anybody wishing to comment on things not on the item, please step forward. Dale, we're going to wait for number 5. Okay, item 3, approval of the agenda.
Second.
Motion and second on the approval of the agenda. Any issues, concerns, changes? All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion does carry. Item 4, consent agenda.
So moved. Second.
Motion and second on the consent agenda. Any concerns or anything you want to pull out? All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion does carry. Item 5, consideration approval, portable recording systems, body camera policy. Now, I'm not sure if it's Jeff or Chief or Kayla or. I have a bu-
Chief.
Yeah, who's,
So we're just basically, so obviously in the past, we were discussing applying for a grant for portable body cameras. We applied for it, council approved us to apply for it. We were successful in one of the grants. The first one we were looking for was a $10,000 grant. The second one that we qualified was a matching grant. And then, so we brought it before the council. I think the total at that time was around like $28,000. They were gonna pay half that amount. It was determined at that time that we're gonna be going with a server base versus a cloud base, because otherwise there's gonna be continuing residual costs that were out there every single month, unlike owning our own in-house server. So that way we could kind of cut some of those costs, plus the grant would cover this. They won't pay for it cloud-based, if you will. They'll only pay for a server. So basically what this is gonna cover is part of the last part of the grant process was passing of a successful policy. And so what I did is I took the policies from Sauk Center, Sauk Rapids, Wade Park, St. Cloud, and used the camera, or the body camera wizard to build it so that it met all the stipulations for the federal grant. This was submitted back in like July, and then last week or 2 weeks ago, we just received approval that it met all their standards amongst what everybody else in the area is doing as well for retention of video. So basically, before we can deploy the cameras, once we order them, we have to have a policy on how we handle the data. That kind of gives you the backstory, unless I've missed something that you've got specifically.
counselors, any questions?
Yeah, we basically
'Cause I
didn't
have-
reinvent the wheel at all. We just went with what other agencies are doing in the same area after running through their legal.
So how are the mechanics, just at the administration of requesting of data? How is that handled?
Yep, it
Does
kind of, yeah,
Goes to you or Kayla or city office, or do we follow the same process, or is there a different process for this?
yeah, I would say it's probably gonna follow the same process, like when somebody comes in and requests copies of like our ICR log or any type of public records that we have for the police department. I don't know if they go through administration first or how they get to Mary, and then she goes through it, because she's our data practice specialist on the PD side of what we release and do not release.
So Kayla,
That's
can you
correct, so
explain-
it would go through Mary.
But do you get it first and then to Mary? Or does it
I don't get them.
go? Okay. So when we get a privacy request, data privacy, does that go through you versus?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so is this a different process, or following a similar process with different mechanics like tape versus paper? Or I'm just trying to figure out how that process works so that I don't get confused and that Mary or you don't get confused.
Sure.
And that, I guess I don't have a solid answer for you at this point. I know that in talking to like Melrose Police Department, for example, when I went up there, I was under the understanding that, say we walk into a college house party, if the colleges wanted to get a copy of that video so they could see who was all present, that doesn't work.
Okay.
Because unless it goes right to the court system, everybody else that's present at that party not being charged or something would have to be redacted. So it follows along the same lines of data privacy. So if somebody comes in and says, I want to see all the calls you had in the last month, Mary, within 30 days or a reasonable period of time, has to get them that information after she pulls out all this sensitive information.
So this could, in fact, cause more administration time?
It might, but I will tell you that we get lots of requests right now for our in-squad videos already.
Okay,
It's, the only difference is we can't take our cameras from the squad car into an apartment, if you will, on a domestic. So all you're hearing is the audio. The difference being here is you're gonna actually be recording live video, and so the software that we're purchasing along with this whole grant is gonna have the redaction capabilities
Okay.
included with that.
okay. Any training that has to occur at our level?
There will
Like-
be some, and I haven't really decided yet if we're going to be making the sergeants in charge of that,
Okay,
or Mary is gonna take care of that. I mean, I'm leaning towards Mary because she's taken so many classes on that.
okay,
But at the same token, I'm just trying to figure out who's gonna be the better fit for this.
If-
So,
and just as a succession plan, if Mary's gone,
correct, then
is there
Candy
a
would,
backup, then
Yep.
Candy?
most likely would be Candy,
Okay,
so.
okay. You had mentioned cost, and part of the grant is it can't be cloud, it can't be server. These are servers we own today?
Not yet. This will be specifically built by WatchGuard to meet these needs. That's been one of the biggest slowdowns right now, because City of Belgrade, from my understanding, went ahead and ordered all the equipment, and they had to sit in their PD basically because it didn't conform to their firewalls, it didn't, a lot of things that I don't quite understand how this all gets built. So what we've actually had to do is we had to update our download speed so that we could actually, because right now, if an officer goes out on a call, all of our squad cars are set up so that they record to the squad car. To get that data in-house, they have to go with a removable thumb drive and pull it in. We're gonna combine that, being that we're using the WatchGuard camera system for the in-squad and the body cameras all in one, and we're gonna get the wireless download so that the squad cars, when they pull into the garage, will download automatically, as well as the officers, saving the sergeant's time of running around chasing cars down.
Okay, so the WatchGuard system is a server off-site,
On-site,
on-site in
Yep.
this facility?
yep.
And
We
who-
actually have one other one so far with our Liberty system, which is all of for our DMT room and our 3 interview rooms. If somebody gets interviewed here, that goes through our Liberty server.
Okay,
Because in the cost of like 2.5 years, we would have exceeded the cost of the cloud per month rental versus owning it ourselves.
okay, so, who manages that then? Who manages?
That is the sergeants currently managing the Liberty system.
Okay, so our sergeants take on some kind of IT responsibility here? I mean, is that what you're saying?
I believe that is. I'm not exactly sure how the whole thing goes right now so far. I mean, we've got, yeah, I don't know that.
So one of my concerns is that the IT staffing expertise is spread among like 4 different people. We don't have an IT service, we don't have expertise in-house to manage it. And I've suggested in past years that we need to put it all in a big bundle and figure out what's the best solution. Because if you're doing some, and Kayla's doing some, and Lori's doing some, and Jeff is doing some, it becomes a disparate, unmanageable system. And so I don't have any problem doing it that way, but at the same time, it's an IT service, an IT server, it's managed storage, it's, you know, it's a little more complicated than the guy going in and doing his watchdog thing. And so, Jeff, a takeaway is kind of, we need to kind of circle the wagons on IT services and devices and servers and all that, what the city's doing. I know the league has an initiative to provide services and servers and those kind of, that expertise to smaller cities. I'm not opposed to it, Dwight, I just think that I see it getting out of hand a little bit. And
Absolutely.
you know, I know that your staff will do fine, I know Kayla does fine, I just, you know, this IT service, the more we become digital, the more we become automated, the more complicated it becomes, the less expertise we have to.
And I do know
actually-
that with the 2 systems that we're proposing right now, both the Liberty system that does our in-house DMT room and 3 evidence rooms, that is our interview rooms, those are taken care of by Northland Business Solution right now because it's so specialized that only they deal with it. As opposed to like Shift, who is our current one.
Yeah.
And then as well as this one with WatchGuard, this actually runs through the Stearns County deal. And so Corey Zach from Stearns County IS takes care of this end of it. He's been working with WatchGuard to get this all through because all the downloads go through our, what I call hockey pucks in the car, but they're the wireless
Yeah.
Wi-Fi pucks.
Yep.
And that is all protected, firewall protected by Stearns County.
Oh, sorry. I have a question. Are you-
Go ahead.
What about with the cameras that we were looking at, for the building cameras and on the water towers and things like that?
Correct.
Is there something, are we able to plug in with them?
Nope,
with
that's a
that?
completely different solution
Really?
there. That's Verkada. Yep.
Okay.
That's cloud-based.
That would have been,
Yep.
And
okay.
that yet is another system
Right.
that we have to manage
Right.
somehow, and with another. So you mentioned 3, and Verkada's a 4th. and-
Right. Yeah, the
Again,
soup
I'm not
can
saying
days are
I'm not
gone.
saying we don't have control, but it
Yep.
seems like we're losing control at some point of IT services
Yep.
and servers or the infrastructure itself. Okay, so the only other question I had was like cost. I mean, I know the grant says it, but, everybody uses cloud-based. Why,
Correct.
any idea why this grant would
Just-
say not cloud-based? Because.
No, the grant didn't say that at all. We just weighed out the costs of how, they won't pay that per month, because they're gonna give us basically a one-time reimbursement.
Okay.
Here's what you have up front. This is to get your program jump-started. And if we went with cloud, that's just a reoccurring every month deal. They're not gonna keep cutting checks. So if we come along and say, in the course of 3 years, this is what you're gonna pay per month for cloud storage, versus, say a server costs us 1,500, 2,000, whatever that is, they're gonna pay half of that up front. So we'll recoup that inside of a year's time or less by going and buying our own server versus paying a monthly subscription to a cloud.
At the end of 3 years, you'll have to buy a new server.
According to what Liberty's told us, we get more life out of that. They were talking like 5 to 7 years. So, I don't know.
Wow.
Yes, Bob?
So what kind of cost is this gonna cost us per year, budget-wise, as far as storage goes?
Well, storage won't cost us once we've bought the server.
It's
We
the-
just
it's
have
the
to
server cost.
follow the
Maintain.
purging schedule. So let's just say figuratively speaking, we have 11 terabytes worth on this server. Right now, talking like St. John's Life Safety, they will only retain, like if they go out on an escort for a student, bringing them to their dorm or anything like that, they record everything. But if there hasn't been a complaint filed against an officer in 90 days, they dump it all. If it's an assault that they went on, a medical, they will retain it a little longer. But any type of contact with students that they're recording that has no complaints in 3 months, they dump it.
Okay.
So I don't remember the exact specifics of how big this server is gonna be, but we figured out we were gonna have like 2 years, 3 years worth if we dumped nothing. So, any
Okay.
verbal warnings on traffic stops, if there hasn't been a complaint filed in 6 months, it's probably gonna go away. But
So is that purge gonna be automatic, or is that, you can intercede on that if you don't want that?
that's kind of the cart before the horse yet. I don't know what the magic answer is gonna be, but I know when I was talking to Jeff about that too, there are certain rules of what under data practice you have to retain for how much time.
Okay.
So,
And that may or may not affect storage capacity and cost.
correct.
So the servers we're buying, are they expandable in memory and storage?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Dale, you got a question or two? I ended mine. I mean, I have some real IT infrastructure concerns here, but it's not just this, it's probably a gambit, but go, Dale, I knew Dale and I talked, so questions.
Yeah, thanks for offering public input. Once again, Dale Wick, St. Joseph. I know we talked about this back when I was on the council, and we decided not to do it at the time, but things have changed a lot in the world, so thank you for going through the process, and you guys are asking the right questions. I've got a couple of things that are kind of grammatical in the policy, so I won't dwell on those, but just more situations like what you mentioned as far as destruction of data and server backups and so forth, especially if it's on-site. You're gonna have to worry about not only the server itself, but the server backups. So you're gonna have to worry about that. And, but if you're looking at, let's see, I'm just kind of going through, one of the things that I noticed, question on with your, what is it, definitions on B, number 7 talks about adversarial means. And I know some of this was copied through, and I don't know if it's gone through legal or not, but it might be wise to have that done, because the last sentence in number 7 says encounters in which citizen demands to be recorded or initiates recording on his or own are deemed adversarial. So does that mean the person reaches over to the chest of the officer and hits the button? I don't know what that means.
how
So,
I do
I mean, I don't know, but it kind of is wide open there. The other one that I've got, well, I've got a couple more, but on D, it says St. Joseph Police Department peace officers, no privacy expectations. And I know you guys are talking about department-issued portable recording devices, but that first sentence says, all recordings made by St. Joseph Police Department peace officers on any portable recording system at any time or while acting in the official capacity shall remain the property of the department. To me, if I read that, it means personal cell phones on vacation in Mexico or whatever is property of the city of St. Joe. So I think that word any might be a little bit stronger. It might be better to do department-issued portable devices or approved department devices, something to keep in mind. The next page, I don't know if you've got them printed out or you're looking at it, but it's use and documentation. Number 4, it talks about 4A, it talks about the recordings should be made into a CAD comments whenever there's a recording. Does that include the testing that you're going to be doing every morning? Because that's in the recordings as well, as far as general stuff or just test and unintentional recordings and test. So in G, letter E, it talks about the recording footage captured through routine function testing or unintentional recordings. So every time somebody goes out in the field, they're going to be testing their camera, and that gets saved. So if you're looking at server space, every officer, every shift, every day, they're going to have to save that. You might want to put an exclusion for testing, or I don't know. Maybe there's rules that you need to save the test, but that adds more to the terabytes that you're going to need. So, what else was there? Sorry, you can stop me anytime, Rick, if you get tired of me.
I was tired of you before you stood up.
Yeah, well, that's true. Under F is recording, and the first one is mandatory recording, but then it talks about anticipates. So it's kind of a head. I mean, I don't know. The word is probably standardized, or the language is probably standardized, but it seems like I would have to anticipate being involved in stop or a seizure, which you don't really anticipate it, but it's a mandatory. They should be on all the time. B is talking about a Terry stop, common word, but you got its definitions. You might want to put Terry stop in the definitions. I'm going to skip the punctuation stuff. In G, you're talking downloading and labeling of data. The word downloading is used here for bringing the stuff from the cameras to the server. But then in the supervisory role, number 5, it talks about portable recording systems properly uploaded. So you should standardize on what term it is. Usually, and this is just myself, but if you go from a smaller device to a larger, it's uploading and then downloading from a smaller device. So in here, then it would be uploading rather than downloading. You have a good section about labeling data, but does that mean the file name itself, or is that the metadata attached to the video? Because you're going to want to standardize on the file name, because later on it says labeling and flagging designations may be corrected or amended based on additional information. You don't want to start changing file names, because that's going to create a nightmare for...
You and I understand that. That's way over Dwight's head.
And I don't mean to interrupt,
Yeah.
but I'm so sorry, Dale. I don't know your background and why you were asked to speak on this.
I wasn't asked. It was just on the website for anybody in the city.
Oh, that wanted to come and
wanted
put,
to
okay.
put input, so.
Okay, perfect. That's,
Yeah.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay,
My background is IT and
IT.
data preservation and
Okay.
security right now, so.
okay, perfect. Thank you.
Dwight, a lot of this has come from the league, hasn't it already?
A lot of this was all from the policy wizard by the federal government one,
Yeah.
where basically you were given 3 clicks. You either chose a language of may, shall, or will type
Okay.
of deal, and it's all block
Kind of
deals.
boilerplate
And you
stuff.
build it. And I just took Sauk Center,
Okay.
Sauk Rapids, and Wade Parks and laid them all out, so.
Okay.
So on that labeling then, I mean, I'm hoping it's not file name. Hopefully the file name stays the same and however the system does that. and that's just the data that's attached to it. There's some grammatical stuff in traffic citations. It says it's traffic citation with the exception of DUI. It should be comma, which would be considered criminal, rather than which would consider criminal, but. The next one is data administration with retention. Dwight, you mentioned about 90 days, get it out there.
That was St. John's, for an
Yeah.
example. It has nothing to do with us.
Okay.
They were just using it as an example.
Because by policy, 365 days in the written policy is the minimum. So you're saving everything for a year, no matter if it's unintentional or testing. B talks about in the discharge of a firearm, it should be 7 years. And then C talks about other stuff for retained for 7 years. So I think just say B should be going down to where C is, or this, because everything's talking about 7 years there. And Rick brought up the data process for destruction. That's big in the industry, is how are you gonna keep that? Because you have a thing in there in the letter F, talks about data subject can come in and request an additional 180 days, but it doesn't say when. So after that 180 days, is it 5 o'clock that day? Is it 4 o'clock? What if they come in at 4:30 and you got an automatic scheduling at 5? All that sort of good stuff is something. And somebody could just come in every 90 days and extend it 180 days, 180 days, 180 days, 180 days.
Do you know, is the software designed to set like year?
Purge points or whatever
purge
else.
points, whatever.
Yep.
And do they archive it to another off-site storage or something?
That
versus-
would not go to some offsite at all. We're just kind of the end
Here?
run. If we do a server-based here, we're using basically the same system right now with the WatchGuard system, where we can set it up that all traffic stops, warnings, purge at a certain time.
Okay.
We don't. We just have them all here, just because we don't have enough data that we haven't run out. We just buy another external hard drive, and it just gets logged into evidence.
Okay, okay.
In number 3, you talk about administrating access, and it says the following are considered data subjects for the purpose of administrating access. To me, a computer person means they're the administrator of granting access, so maybe the term should be granting access rather than administrating access, but that's just verbiage. In 3B1, it talks about people for the first time. It said portable recording system pertaining to the people. Should be like data subject, probably. Now, 3C talks about confidential data. And the reason I bring that up is because it says the classification takes precedence over private classification listed above and the public classification listed below. And below in the public data, talks about data documenting the discharge of a firearm by police or data that documents the use of force. So essentially, it says the portable recording system data that is collected or created as part of an active criminal investigation is confidential. So in the news, they're always talking about they haven't released the video yet. They haven't released the video yet. Well, in here, the city would not be allowed to release the video until after the criminal case is or the investigation is closed, because you've got discharge and use of force by a police officer listed as public data, but your confidential data statement overrides the public data. So you might want to look at the wording a little bit on that one.
Huh, interesting.
Again, just one person's view of it. It should probably go through legal to make sure.
Has Sue seen this? Diggy?
I haven't submitted it to her.
Do we need to?
I think, obviously, we've got a subject expert here that's a great resource for our community. And all of us have understanding of the principles behind data practices and and following tried and true practices and documents that have been reviewed by attorneys in other communities.
Yeah.
But with the type of questions that are here, type of expertise, I think it would behoove us to sit down with Dale and kind of go through it and document some of that, and then and then circle back, spend the time kind of at a staff level, so we can do a good job of understanding what we can learn from Dale and then what he can learn from why it is the way it is, so.
Yeah, and legal, I mean,
Yeah,
half
no-
an hour, whatever it takes for Sue to take a look at it, probably good to do. Underneath public data, number 4, you've got the third sentence is the same as the second sentence, so you just might wanna get rid of that one. One of the things that, and then I was trying to find the logic, and that's probably why Sue might be helpful, is because when I'm looking at the, how a person can review the public recording, you asked who does the process, who gets the request. But in here, it kind of circles around, and if it's an active investigation, nobody gets the data. So, I mean, I know that's not the case, that you didn't want that, but, because it says unless the data is part of an active investigation, an individual data subject shall be provided a copy. But if they're under investigation or they're looking for, I mean, and maybe that's the case, if they're under investigation, maybe we don't want to give them the video. But, just something to look at.
Sure.
In that same section, number 2 talks about, letter I, talks about data on under individuals in the recording who do not consent to the release must be redacted. So it's that redaction process, and the software you said takes care of that. But the consent is another thing. How do we document the consent? That person said, no, that video's fine, I don't need to have it redacted. That's another data process that you need to keep in track of. Keeping track of that consent and how long you need to keep it. So it's another point of concern.
Dale, why don't we set up a meeting with you and Dwight, Jeff, and, I don't know, Sue? I mean, maybe she needs to see this before we have that meeting or something.
Yeah, I would say that she probably would before the meeting.
Yeah, and then come back and.
I'd like to find out what, get this
Sure.
detailed, and then maybe even talk to, I mean, there've been many attorneys and
Yep.
legal people that have looked at this at the League of Minnesota Cities, I'm sure. So, I mean, obviously it'd be good to have our own attorney look at it, but
Yep.
to have that resource there
I
as
mean,
well. This isn't the first time it's been
Yeah.
looked at by an attorney, so.
Yeah, and that's
so-
why maybe my questions are just kind of moot, but I mean,
Th-
just
it
looking
might
at
be,
it,
so-
going, this isn't,
We're really
Sound right.
close. We're really close.
yeah.
And it's something
Yeah,
we need to do.
exactly.
We absolutely need to do this. I mean,
Yeah.
we need to get this moved forward.
And that was the last thing that I had anyway, so it was one of those things where it's,
Okay.
it's a lot of legal, regular, moral, so I wouldn't want to try to do it, by yourselves without having some legal review of it. But also to take a look at that server cost with the backups and the data retention stuff is gonna be key.
Yeah, IT is
Yeah,
it's gonna be out of control soon. You want
And
to take
also
that as a
the process.
follow-up or a to-do?
yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, from my experience, communities, their IT systems develop over time, and
I know.
they just grow, and then people keep doing things as they did in the past, and things add on, and eventually get to a point where it kind of, as we all know, kind of caves in on
Caves
itself,
in.
and then you
Yep.
have to kind of start over fresh, and I haven't been around the organization long enough to see where you're at in it. It wasn't one of the things initially identified by anyone as a problem in this organization, although that doesn't mean it isn't one. It's just not something that comes to mind. Becker, which is a similar sized town, they had their own dedicated IT person in charge of managing everything. They had a golf course and restaurant, other stuff going on there, but, it wouldn't be out of the question for at least to have a half-time person in this organization, maybe sharing with Wade Park or something to try to keep things organized.
The services that, again, towns this size as they're growing is in dire need, and that's why I'm kind of hoping the league comes up with they work with vendors to do this for cities that are having similar problems, so we can't, it's gonna cave in on us pretty soon, but no big deal. Thanks, Dale.
Thank you.
So let's just postpone that until we have another meeting and we have Sue Diggy take a
Table
look
it.
at it. Table it.
Question.
Sure, Kevin.
Does by postponing the approval of the recording systems policy
Oh.
stop us from getting the systems?
Thank you, the grant.
No, I think we
Are we
already.
gonna
We have
order the
time.
systems?
Yeah.
We have time.
Yeah.
We're still waiting on Stearns County to finish with the download capabilities
I
and
don't want
everything
this
else.
discussion we had tonight to slow down the fact that our cops are gonna have body cameras
Correct.
as soon as possible.
Yeah. No, I think we have time to iron out the language.
Very good. Thanks. Good question. Item 6. That's you, Jeff?
Yes, okay, so council's asked to consider authorizing staff to research development of ordinances or strategies for managing the impact of large private gatherings on public safety, health, and welfare of the community. And we're just asking for authorization to look into it and come back with a report and some options for you. And this stems from a meetings, a series of meetings being held by St. John's, St. Ben's security folks, police department, and administrative staff and the mayor, kind of dealing with the ongoing concerns with use of alcohol in public spaces, public urination, other things that do occur when large crowds gather and create litter, create a sense of, not a good sense of well-being within the community. And just being straightforward with it, I think there's been some strong efforts made in the past to try to manage this with the means, with ordinances and with law enforcement coming in to help out to enforce the codes as they exist. But it is expensive, and it is hasn't necessarily solved all the problems. So this group has been grappling with, okay, how do we deal with this? And I understand this has been a long-standing or kind of concern. This isn't to create a new culture or ruin the proper behavior and festivities that occur in college in St. Joseph's from time to time. But let's manage it. Let's do a better job of protecting the general sense of well-being for the community and do it in a thoughtful way. So with that in mind, this organization, which I think it's been kind of loosely developed, but I'm sure everyone is kind of somewhat aware of this group, would just like the city staff to take a look at the issue and then come back to that group with those options, and then that group would come to the city council with kind of recommendation. And then that would be hopefully to occur before April 22nd of this year, which happens to be Case Day. And we'd like to get things in order so that that can be managed in a fine fashion. So that's what the request is just to give us some authorization to look at it. Now, what we'll do is we'll look at, there's ordinances and this situation isn't unusual throughout the country and throughout Minnesota even, where cities with colleges embedded in them have to do things to kind of manage the interaction a little bit. And so we'll look at that ordinances that are out there. We'll bring that information to the group and then set some goals as to what you want to have happen with this, with regulations, and then start piecing through them. Try to come up with an assembly that is like a good first start at making some positive movement in that regard. So it's really what it is. It's kind of taking control into your own hands to try to make St. Joe a better place, and this is kind of how it would start, and that's
So
it.
moved.
Okay.
Second. Motion and second, authorizing city staff to develop ordinance strategies about large party gatherings and non-business entities.
Question here.
Yeah, go, Bob.
Now, this group you're talking about, I don't know who they are. Are they mainly, is it college, St. John's, St. Ben's, student groups, et cetera?
Yeah.
You know, and what I'm hearing and what I'm kind of thinking is, this is kind of a end around end, trying to get the city to sanction activities such as Case Day or whatever it may be. Because right now, the colleges sanction that with security and put it on the city. I'm thinking they're trying to get us as a city to, okay, it's okay to have this Case Day, it's another 4th of July event or something. So, hopefully that's not it.
To my understanding, Administrator Mayor, the ad hoc committee is made up of the mayor, Dwight,
Myself.
Yourself, thank you, and the security.
The security of both
And then, of
colleges.
course, the deans, correct?
And a member from the sheriff's department too,
Thank
because they
you.
deal with St. John's as well.
So if that's what you're talking about, that committee, so that's what he's talking about collaborating.
Okay.
Right.
That's how I'm
Correct.
understanding it?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just wanted to make sure that that's how I understood it. Okay. If I didn't know if that's what you were talking about, the committee or the group that he's talking about, where he's asking for the staff to
Right,
take
the
the
staff,
notes
the
out.
staff would
Okay,
provide
well,
information.
we'll let it
to
roll out and see what develops here.
Right.
Okay.
And I think for Bob's purposes too, what the colleges are basically asking for or suggesting is they're basically instructing their students to adhere to a good neighbor policy. And if they're not breaking any laws that day, it's hard for them to enforce their student conduct both on and off campus. And so being that they really don't have any control off campus is what they're basically saying, tell us what law they're breaking. Tell us what ordinance they're not following.
Oh, okay.
So that's what they're asking for. You bring us something that the city of St. Joe requires or restricts, and if our students aren't following that, then they will request their students follow that.
Okay, this way they have a hammer.
Correct.
It's another tool,
Got it.
a little more stringent. Motion and second, authorizing staff to develop ordinances and strategies. Any other concerns or questions? All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thanks, Jeff.
Yep.
Item 7,
No formal report this evening. We'll be back at your meeting in March with the feasibility reports for the street improvements, so I'll have more to talk about next month.
I just have a quick question. Notice that it rained a little bit today and March is gonna be melting. Do we have like any proactive approach to watch the drainage that,
Other than staff making trips.
you know what I mean?
We're monitoring, but we don't have a set
Okay.
schedule, if you would.
Out there,
Morningside, where they
Niagara
did
Falls.
we did some excavation and changed the
Okay.
catch basins and whatever, so I'm curious to
We'll
stay in
probably be
front
one
of
of the
that.
first ones there.
Yeah, I know that, and I'm gonna get called too,
Well,
I
I'm sure
just,
that the residents would
Yeah, well,
have you on speed dial?
We'll have some good monitoring.
yeah,
Yes.
I just wanna stay in front of it, I don't wanna, get the flash flood warning, after the big melt or something, okay. Thank you, Randy. Item 8, administrator reports.
Okay, so I'm gonna take a big, deep breath here as I launch into this. There's about 10 items here, and I apologize for kind of you getting this later. There's a lot of items, wasn't able to get it all done before the weekend hit, but they're all important items, and I'll try to march through them. Now, the agenda shows 3 bullet points, but I'd like to follow the administrative report as far as going through things one by one. So the first one relates to the workshop we had a few days ago where we identified a number of legislative initiatives that are very important to the city to get accomplished. One major one, making sure that we maintain the $4 million for the community center. Another one is to make sure that we keep the money for the Gateway project in the bonding bill as well. And then other legislation relating to preserving or trying to gain tax exemption for the community center as well. So we have some very important initiatives. And because of the degree of the importance, we really don't want to leave that up to chance. So I think at that workshop, it was suggested that we look at using some lobbying service, which we then, in response to that, contacted Chris De La Forest, who was successful in helping the city, I think, acquire some bonding money and developed pretty good reputation among staff. I don't know if everyone knows him, but very capable. And subsequent to that, we just described to him the issues at hand. We got a proposal back, and then we went back and forth a few times, narrowed down the scope a little bit, and tried to shave as much cost as we could. And then he was able to put together a proposal, which he's presented to us, which I think Kayla handed out, or we have available. And normally, obviously I don't like to provide you this type of information last second, but, we're trying to keep caught up. The train is moving, and we're trying to, catch up. And John does have the time, and he does have the capacity to help us out. So in his proposal, he's asking for, what we'll be doing is the projects that I just mentioned, the local option sales tax, we're gonna keep moving on that. the tax exemption,
I did that on purpose.
and, let me make sure I got the right one here.
Don't you dare throw it at me.
Make sure I get the right one. Yeah, this is the right one. So he would like $16,000 to work on those projects, which means making sure they're jacketed, making sure that we know exactly how they're moving through, you know, the House and the Senate, making sure that we're on board if we have to testify on anything, making sure nothing falls between the cracks with any problems with kind of the, especially the community center $4 million, make sure that that doesn't drop off, because it could drop off if it's not spent. I think in this table, in this room, we all have, you know, a good knowledge of how the legislature works, but we're not into the machinery day in, day out, and we don't know exactly what's happening at what time, and I think you're taking your chances if you expect your own legislatures to kind of, to track everything on your behalf. Now, they might have the best intentions and maybe could do it, but you don't always know that for sure. So I'm kind of carrying on a little bit, but it isn't cheap, but it also is something that I think your constituents would be pretty sad if somehow something didn't, you know, we didn't keep the $4 million or we lost an opportunity. So I think it's, given the track record and given the nature and the cost and the revenue that's out there, it's up to you to decide if it got the value or not, but I think it's pretty good insurance. That's all I have.
And Lori?
Counselor Klusner.
So the contract for 16,000 is for the 2023 legislative session.
Yes.
So potentially, how long could that session go?
I think the intent is to the end of the date that it's supposed to end.
So he would be, this organization would be committed to the city for that
Right.
whole period of
Yeah.
time, whether it's 2 months or 18
Well,
months.
If there's a special session, that's something else.
Yeah.
So
Got
the
it.
legislation
Up to what's the date,
ends and
May?
then it goes to
We don't know.
special. So then, if you'd
Yes.
have to have a separate agreement,
If it's a special
if it's a
session.
special one.
The current legislative session ends in the end of May.
Yep.
And so if there's new sessions, that doesn't include this contract.
So we're buying this organization's time to do these things.
Correct.
Yes.
Could, if something else comes up, can we feed that in? Or is that another, it's
You
just
mean-
limited to these items?
Limited to A
Correct.
through F.
Okay, all right.
And Jeff and I talked, we're removing D.
Yeah,
We're not gonna help we're not gonna pay for City of Foley. They're gonna do their own,
I talked,
Okay.
yeah, and that's why I
Like-
was confused when I saw
Yeah.
that, because I talked to him, he said he was gonna take those out.
yeah.
So somehow,
We're not gonna help, I mean, we'd like to help Foley,
Right.
but at the same time, they can afford their own bonding specialist and lobbying specialist, you know, we'd love to have it done, but we know that Foley was down there.
so D, yeah,
Last-
so
this
thank you
last
for
month.
catching that. D is
Yeah,
out.
D is out.
And then
Foley can
also-
afford their own.
we did take out the exemption for the.
Energy.
Energy, I don't know if he took that out.
He did.
He
and
did take that one out, because.
And
I
so
don't know if he
then,
wanted-
Jeff, then the last two things. Number one, when we hire a new city administrator, this will carry over, this relationship
Yes.
will carry
Yes.
over so that the new city administrator is gonna be on top of the relationship.
Right,
And I think $16,000 is chump change when we're looking at the grandiosity of millions of dollars of things that we have in the hopper right now, that we have one opportunity to get our legislators to get on board. And I went down with the mayor to do some lobbying for a day a few weeks ago, and it was great. But at the end of the day, you're there for like 5 or 10 minutes, and we shake hands and make our point. But if we
We
had
do.
someone there on site, bird dogging it on a regular basis, I think it's money well spent.
Just so everybody knows, Jeff and I have had this conversation, John and Chris and I have had this conversation, that E is our number one priority, and that is the sewer main
Yep.
extensions. It's not, I mean, these aren't prioritized by any means. It's extending the sewer main improvements is number one on our list. Everything else we'll look at, but from a bonding perspective, that was in the last bonding bill. And we want to make sure that's in this bonding bill, so it moves forward by early March. And Chris and John are both aware of that, but, and I don't know if he needs that prioritized by us or anything, but
No, I
I'm
think
sure he's aware of it.
he's aware, he knows that the
Yeah.
$4 million that we want to, protect the current appropriations from cancellation, that's
Yep.
under F. And he wasn't, there's a chance there could be additional revenue available here, and he'll keep the antennas up.
Yep.
But the main effort is to keep what we've got, and don't let anything slip, because
Right.
there's been so much accomplished, and you'd hate to somehow have something fall through the cracks, and that's it.
Have these numbers been adjusted for inflation?
You mean, the sewer main it went from 5 to 6.5 million. We don't have a exact answer on the additional bonding appropriation that may be available for, that's item F.
Yeah.
But our legislators are looking at that. Everything else is status quo, I think. Exemptions, local sales tax, those kinds of things. But we did adjust the sewer main improvements, and they have that jacket, or they should have that jacketed pretty soon.
Okay.
Okay. The only real question I have is, and I haven't made a motion or anything, but where do we get this from? I know, I hate it, sorry, Lori, but it's something that we didn't budget for.
This is one of the items that we would take from 390. It is one of those types of projects that we have that money set aside
Okay.
for things that we didn't know this was gonna come up until last minute.
We didn't really think about it and we should have been thinking about this last budget cycle, knowing that the bonding didn't go through, but that's, I take blame for that. We should have put that on the radar again, so. I think it's well worth it. Just, Chris is down there all the time, John's down there all the time. We will actually get updates. We get updates weekly on where they're at with things, so they're very good at communicating as well.
And there's a lot of money floating around.
There is a lot of money available. Yeah, there is. So you're seeking a motion, are you?
Do you need a motion, or?
Yeah,
Or-
it's a contract.
Yeah, because it's a contract, we have to,
So moved.
A second.
motion and second, and that's to engage in contract with De La Forest Consulting for the term listed here.
I got the date wrong on the heading, but it'll be to
Is it,
the end of the regular session.
okay,
We've done this before, Kevin, and we
Yeah.
paid extra. It was based upon days and so forth.
it was. When we went into other sessions, we had to keep renewing the contract, so. Motion and second, approving the contract with De La Forest Consulting. Other questions or concerns? All those in favor signify by aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion does carry. Thank you, Jeff. Item,
Okay,
just like to keep going.
the next one, just reporting the city received 3 proposals from reputable vendors interested in conducting the pay equity study, that the council, said we should, seek proposals. Looking at a possible process that could work is to present to the Personnel Committee for input and determine if you want to interview the candidates and select one, or if you just want to take the proposals. I have direct experience with all 3 of them. I can tell you the pluses and minuses of all of them and compare that to what they cost, and we can talk about it, or you can conduct interviews, or you can bring it to the city council at the next meeting. But given your a process that can work is to take it to the Personnel Committee for a recommendation to the council at your next meeting. So it's up to you how you'd like to proceed.
Okay.
Yeah, we can look at it. And
Counselors, your opinion?
I'd like to defer to the Personnel Committee and just figure it out. But if you need to bring it to us, bring it to us.
Well, formality.
Well, it's gonna end up here anyway,
Yeah.
at some point.
And we'll explain reasons why and put it on the consent agenda, and if you feel that you want to talk about it, you can pull it off.
Sounds good.
Good.
Okay,
Jeff, you wanna set up a meeting then?
Yep.
Bob and I?
I'll set that up.
Okay.
All right. Next item,
Should we remove that next item? Based on,
did we get a volunteer?
we didn't, but Matt sent a response.
Did he say, what did
He
he say?
said he'd prefer citizen versus council.
I didn't see
And I didn't
that.
realize that. I
Okay.
thought it was open to anybody.
Okay,
I mean, I suppose we could still open, I mean,
yeah.
I just read that, so hold on. Matt Stalling, the city administrator from St. Cloud.
Oh, okay.
He just sent an email right before this meeting. Matt says, actually, we're looking for citizen appointment. And mistakenly, he said Human Rights Commission, should have said a Human Rights Advisory Board. It's, the advisory board will be comprised of citizens from each city. So, that's what he responded with.
Okay, so
when-
with that, I mean, it was thought that perhaps we'd let the council decide if
Yeah.
you wanted to, if anyone wanted to serve on that advisory
Board.
board. It's again, it's one of those ad hoc groups. There isn't, but it is regionally centered with St. Cloud being the focal of it, and they're just asking for other cities if they want to send anyone there to
Participate.
represent their area. So apparently, if we're following our normal procedure now, we would advertise that opening, and then we would collect applications, and then once we get the time of the collection ends, then we would give them to Rick. Rick would look through them, interview, and then make a recommendation to this group. So if, that's where we would go next, unless somebody
And-
here wants to.
Yeah, the reason we didn't do that, because we thought city council could have their first crack at it.
Right.
That's how we interpreted what
Right.
Matt had said first.
Right.
But if he wants a citizen appointment, then, I
We
don't know.
can do
If you
that.
guys, anybody want to?
Yeah. Give it to Adam.
Adam, you want to do that?
I have enough on my plate.
Okay, let's,
You have to resign from council to do it.
so let's go through the regular process then. I didn't realize, Matt, I didn't realize that was
Okay,
gonna be a citizen
that's fine.
appointment.
No harm. All right, so we'll get that advertised.
Okay,
Okay, Dwight, you wanna take the honors on this one, or should I do it? The police
Police officer
officer applications, we have some.
We received a total of 4 applications. For those that are on the personnel committee or were, 3 of them have applied already. One of them is not going to be eligible until summer. They're currently in school. So we're just going to send them off a letter and see once, depending on where we're at with eligibility. So, but otherwise, we're planning on just interviewing everybody that applied. So I think we're selecting some data as we go.
So according to Kayla and the record, how we've done things in the past, I presume that the lineup for the people on the panel would be at least one member of Personnel Committee, and then the sergeants, chief, usually administration, and then that would be it. So that would, then that recommendation then comes to this group for review and consideration. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
So, it's just a matter of lining that up.
so is that a bad sign or good sign that we're not getting new applicants?
Well, Cold Spring just recently opened theirs up and they didn't have any. So
Yeah.
we have 4. 2 of them, though, that have applied in the past became second really quick. I mean, it was just down to kind of a toss. They interviewed very well, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, I just see that repeating across the state, that the
Mhm.
applications, the pool of applicants is not there.
I think on Friday, there was 127 postings
Yeah.
throughout the state of Minnesota, and not all of those were just for one officer. Some were for 4 or 5, for like St. Cloud PD and stuff, so there's 127 different ones on the pool line. So it's not getting any better,
So 4 is pretty good when you think about that.
right? Yep.
Oh, we're right up there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, the next item, as you recall, Granite Table Organization presented here. I think, I can't remember, a couple of meetings past, we had three of the 5 here. And we were planning on bringing it to you for a vote on the $3,000 request, because on its face, it looked really like it made a lot of sense, and I still think it probably does. But subsequent to that, there's been some questions that have popped up from the city administrator group, the area committee, cities, different questions that that have come up, and some have said, well, we'll do it, we'll put it on the agenda if you put it on first. You know, someone's got to break the ice, but I think some of the questions are like, well, how much is each city being asked to contribute? Are they being asked to contribute based on their tax capacity, the wealth of their community, or is it just $3,000 for every community, whether you have a population of 70,000 or 7,000, right? So,
I think more information needs to be given. There was a lot
Never
that
heard
I
of
still had
Granite
questions
Table.
on with it. So I don't even think we should,
consider it until then.
right, yeah, until we get more information.
So what we were thinking of doing as a group and, is to kind of aggregate all our questions, present that to, the organization, and then everyone can get their report back and act on the same information, right?
Mhm.
So, for now, we're gonna, if you so see fit, we'll just table that one,
Until more information.
Yeah.
Yeah.
right, okay? Did you get all that, Bob?
Yeah,
Yeah,
Okay,
I still don't know what the Granite Table Foundation is.
yeah, you weren't
Yeah,
here for the
you missed that
presentation,
one.
so send him
So-
the video.
it was good, but
It
we'll
was.
get you more information on that. Okay?
It's all good. All right.
All right. Next one, okay, 2 candidates for opening as the fire department were approved for training pending background checks and physicals, and they both bring good level of experience and training, so that's good news from the fire department. The request for action form, which is this one right here, this was the first time around, and I think we did a pretty good job with filling it out okay, but it provides additional introductory information on the cover page, and it's just formatted a little bit differently than what you're accustomed to. We hope it's an improvement, so we're just gonna adopt this and see how that goes. But what it does, it's kinda nice because it, you've got in the top left-hand corner who's prepared the item, so when the mayor looks at the item, he knows who to address as far as giving the report on it, probably at the meeting. It shows that I've reviewed it, so I have to initial off on that, so that I'm accountable, or the city administrator is accountable for having looked at it and approved it for submittal. So that's where the buck stops, so the city administrator has to sign off, yep, I looked at it, and if you don't like it, come to me with, questions. And then just other items on there too, you've got your general description of it and the action requested right away, so you know right out of the chute what you're being asked to do or what the item is, and then the information just flows on behind. So it's not that dissimilar to what you've had in the past, but I think, ever evolving, and hopefully it helps you guys out. So that's that one. Back page, AFSCME is gonna vote on the 14th. Fingers crossed that will get approved by membership. And Lori and her crew and everyone else really is working hard on the transition from Banyan to Civic Systems. Lori, you wanna say a little bit about that? I think it's worth noting here because it's a significant endeavor and it needs to be recognized.
Yeah, the city's been on using the Banyan financial system, well, since I started here. I think early 2000s, maybe even earlier than that, they implemented Banyan. Felt like we were kind of outgrowing it, so we used ARPA money to go with Civic Systems to switch over, and it took almost like a year in the making to finally get to this point of implementation. We had our first official training on a module, and it was business licensing, so 3 or 4 of us attended that today. Pretty excited about what the system can do. It'll be a lot more interactive between modules. For instance, business licensing, rental licensing, liquor licensing. We were tracking a lot of that kind of by a spreadsheet, and then we would generate an invoice in general invoicing for a liquor license, but nothing really to kind of tie it together. Now we have a system that will track all these licenses, and it will send, a check comes in for a liquor license, and so through point of sale, it will be able to pick that up from business licensing and carry it through the system. So then there's a lot of less data entry, easier tracking. Any one of us can pull a report if there's things outstanding, if there's violations. Dwight's team does compliance checks, say with alcohol or cigarettes. We can add those to the property, and so when we're doing the renewals of those licenses, we can look at that, compare it to what our ordinance says on if we should renew that or not. So anyways, it'll be very well interactive between different modules, so we're pretty excited. It's also very time intensive, so you will see pretty much all of us in finance involved in a lot of the training as we go through each of the modules, but it also includes other members. Nate and Kayla sat in on the business licensing today, so it just depends on what the module is. We might pull different people for different things, depending on what their job descriptions are, and to make sure that we have at least a backup person that can handle whatever that module is. So at no time will just one person understand business licensing. A couple of us will, so we can back each other up as well in that process. So excited. It'll go, April is our last official rollout training, but we're already setting up follow-up, like when the renewal licensings come, business license, like liquor license comes up for Kayla, they're setting up a time that they can walk through that process the first time. So.
All right, thanks, Lori.
So just, I'm gonna repeat my mantra, of every time we have new software, a new training, there's a new IT service and a new breakdown, and now there's new things we have to learn, and I mean, we stumbled across, oh, now we can tie all these pieces together, versus actually looking for a way that we can tie these pieces together.
And
IT is gonna absorb us, just like personnel costs at some point.
And we picked, so that is, your point, very well taken, because we still have to interact, like, say, with Laserfish. We have to interact with Beacon, both on property management and on water billing. So these are different service providers that provide those services. So we have Shift Technology being our point person, because they're our main IT contract, that they have to work with those subcontractors to help us get all of these interact. Now, Civic Systems, one of the reasons we chose that is because the city of Way Park and the city of Sartell are also on that system. So again,
Some backup there.
yeah, we can back up each other, at least have some general understanding of the system, so we can still get people paid, we can still get utility billing out, you know, if something happens where one of us
Okay.
are not available.
Okay, I won't say it again.
And Shift does work with both of those cities as well, so they know Civic Systems, but point taken, there's a lot of different IT systems out there that they have to interact with these subcontractors, so.
You said, I didn't hear the date. When you think you're live, you're done with Banyan?
We will run Banyan side by side for a few months, only just to make sure everything's calculating correctly, reconciling correctly. So it probably won't be until this summer. You know, we only bill utility billing every 2 months, so we have to do a couple bill cycles. Unfortunately, that means we have to run it in Banyan and in Civic Systems, so we're gonna be duplicating efforts for a few cycles,
No,
just to make sure everything is calculating correctly.
I just want to make sure the rollout goes fine, smooth, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, Lori. Draft interview questions for the city administrator position are available for you to pick up on the way out. Take a look at them. I'm not asking you to discuss them here. Take a look at them, and if you have any questions, concerns, then you should email them to Charlene, okay? So she can help you through that, or can kind of aggregate any comments. So
Everybody have Charlene's contact info?
you should all have her, if you
Okay.
don't, I can get it to you.
Okay.
Send it to me.
Okay, I'm gonna do that, okay. All right, one second. The regional fire study that you're probably aware of, is underway, has been underway for a while, and the fire departments are in the process of aggregating their data and then translating it to work on the software that the consultant is using. It's not really super easy, because everyone's using different platforms, and they're trying to get it into one where the data can be analyzed by the consultants. So we're working on that, or Jeff has been working on that, and it looks like I think it's, what date is it, February 16th or 17th? The data should be aggregated, and then the group will get back together to make sure that it's good data, and then the consultants will begin to analyze it further.
Question.
Yep.
Yes, sir.
So I've been appointed to the fire board. Should I be attending these meetings?
No, you don't need to attend these.
Why not?
They're all, it's really kind of, you can if you wish to, but it's really kind of the managerial questions and the operation of each department. Data is being kind of consolidated, aggregated, and given to a consultant to analyze. Now,
How often does the fire study group meet?
they've only met once on a Zoom meeting, and this was last Friday. So most of the communication is going from the consultant to the individual departments to collect the data. So it's really, that's really the tough part of the project, is trying to make sure you've got good data.
So who is gonna communicate to the council the progress of the fire study once you're gone? Is it gonna be the chief, or is it gonna be our new city administrator?
It will be, well, first off, the consultant itself will communicate it with a document, and I don't know if there'll be a public meetings or presentation for the council from the consultant dealing with all those cities, but I'm sure there'll be some sort of consolidated report, and maybe a presentation. And then from there, the city administrator or fire chief can present that, and you can discuss it at that time.
Adam, you wanted to say something?
Our fire chief Jeff is gonna be working with the consultant, so any questions that you or anybody might have on the call, so could be gathered from him.
Okay.
It's a long ways from having any answers come out of this
No,
report.
I get it.
right
I just
now,
didn't know if, I'm on the fire board, I haven't been on the fire board before. I thought,
but- Yeah,
fire study, I'm on the fire board, maybe I should be at the meeting. If I don't need to, that's one less meeting I have to
Yeah.
go to.
you don't have to
So
worry about
thank
it
you.
yet. Great. Okay. I don't know, Rick, you wanna steal my thunder and talk about the next one?
What's the next one?
The annual meeting of the GSDC?
Well, the annual meeting is a kind of a dog and pony show for the GSDC and what work they've done, and under this format, they're gonna have a, kind of a panel of all the mayors up there, and we're gonna talk about businesses, shared businesses in the six-city area across by the mayors. So there'll be a little panel discussion and presentation at that point. Yeah, it's gonna be Shauna and who else? Somebody else is gonna mediate the
I
thing.
can't remember.
Yeah,
but Sean's
Shauna
kind
and
of
somebody
the
else
Main show.
kind of put it together.
Yeah,
And so we put together some talking points, and we'll have a little flyer for everybody at the meeting, and I'll be up in front of the panel, along with all the other mayors, and I think Becker, Tracy will be there as well.
and anyone's invited to that meeting as well,
Yeah.
right? So if
Yeah.
anyone wants to attend,
Yeah.
to participate, it should be really interesting.
It's free, isn't it?
It's free. I got
Yeah,
my-
Yeah.
there's it's required registration, but it's free.
Yeah,
So,
it's at the Capital One building, I believe?
yeah, downtown.
Yeah.
You have to pay for parking.
Not if we park behind the cathedral.
That's right.
I got my spot.
All right, the last but not least, still work is progressing on the community center YMCA agreement. I'm not gonna make any promises, but the hope is that we'll have something before you at the next meeting. That is the hope. And, I think we're getting closer to coming up with something that really works, that can work well, but until you see it, it's still a work in progress. So we are having a campaign committee is meeting tomorrow morning. That's a separate from the actual agreement, but the capital campaign committee needs to have this agreement in place before it could be effective. So, we don't wanna hold up the fundraising by not having this agreement done. So really, hopefully we'll come to grips with that and have it ready to go, and, take it from there.
Very good. Thanks, Jeff.
Yep.
Any questions for Jeff? Anybody? Very good. Yeah, number 9, mayor and council reports, miscellaneous business. So the only really report I have is that Kevin and I were at Legislative Action Day on the 25th. We met with our legislative bodies, senator, except Jeff Howe was already in a transportation meeting or something. Good presentations on, Governor Walz was there to speak about his budget, as were the majority and minority leaders of both houses, to talk about their initiatives. And if you read anything in the newspaper, you see that the Democratic-controlled House and Senate, they're moving bills swiftly. They are moving at light speed. And it's kind of their agenda items. The talk on the Hill, or at the Capitol, is that they do want to get a bonding done. It's gonna be probably more of an earmark and a bonding, with some of the, cash available early in March, and then they're gonna try and do another tax bill along with another bonding bill, through the rest of the session. But what that looks like, bonding requires a supermajority, so I'm, like last year, I'm not sure we're gonna get there. Republicans will probably want some things out of the budget. The governor is requesting, or his budget is, increasing taxes by about 20 to 25%, do you remember? Something like that. It's like a 20% increase in budget, taxes or fees, which nobody's really crazy about when they have that kind of surplus. Anyway, we've given our legislative priorities to our priorities to our legislators, and we'll follow up with them. I plan to be down there on the 16th. There's a League of Minnesota Cities Board meeting on that day as well. That's all I really have. Counselors, report? Any miscellaneous business?
I'd move to adjourn.
Second.
Motion and second to adjourn. All those in favor signify by aye. Aye. Opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you all very much.